The wait is over. Okay, we're on part 3, and last week's comments of my video pertaining to, I think it was part 2, we're talking about a lot of the issues of the marriage versus the church and stuff, and boy, I was pleasantly surprised. Actually, I didn't realize so many people had these experiences with Christ Embassy. You know, I might just do a separate video on that later, because I have seen, anytime I've seen a video where people are calling them out, you go into the comments and the Christ Embassy folk be dragging the mess out of the creator who made that video or whatever. But on this occasion, when I looked at my comment section, if I'll be honest, I think 99%, probably even 100% from what I've seen so far, were people who was given their own accounts, or from people that they knew, or, you know, just their feedback of the African church in general and how it affects our life. Like, honestly, we're in different times now. A lot of people are waking up, okay? There's a lot of people who are really standing in their truth. They can see the cult-like mentality and everything. And we will discuss that for another day. But today's video, we're going to talk about the big thing. I think the main thing, when you peel all the layers of the banana back, okay, or away, this was the main catalyst that led to my divorce, my weight. And we're going to get into it, okay? I would say one of the biggest things that people immediately associate me with, and it's always been like that my whole life, is my weight. You know, where I be described, I'll be like, oh, the fat girl, or they'll be like, oh, the big girl. Like, there's never any other quality of me that people you know, particularly will say, like, not even, oh, the dark skinned girl, or, you know, the brown skinned girl, or, you know, the short girl. I don't know, they would immediately just describe the fat girl. And honestly, my weight has been something that I've struggled with my whole life. From childhood, I was bullied, and I've had a lot of trauma even as a teenager. As a teenager, I even had a lot of predators and men prey on me. And again, I would associate that with my bigness, because they would say things like, you're fat and you're nice. And a lot of it was actually Caribbean men, weirdly enough. Rarely ever like an uncle or anything. And I don't know if it's because of where I grew up, because I grew up in Harlesden, northwest London, and so that's an area that has a lot of West Indian men. And again, associated with traumas from a childhood, I have been sexually assaulted as a teen, I have been raped as a teen, and is always linked back to the fact that I was a big person and men just took advantage of my vulnerability and the fact that I was young. And honestly, my objective in life has always been to lose weight, so that this trauma and this abuse stops, from not just being name called, but also being abused from it. And I knew that when I got the opportunity to, I would lose the weight in a way where it will be gone for good, so that I can somewhat live a life that is worth living. I met my ex and I was on a diet. Okay, I shared this in part 1. I was on a Cambridge diet, and after I had my first child, I was a size 22. That was the largest I went to. And then I lost weight myself via the Cambridge diet. I had a consultant in Brixton. Some of you, if you've ever done the Cambridge diet, you'll know him, because his videos used to do really well back in YouTube back in the day. He actually sadly passed away years ago. He did unalive himself, which was tragic, but he was an amazing mentor and stuff. His girlfriend also ran the weight loss business with him. And I remember coming in for my very last consultation, and I said to her, unfortunately, I'm not going to come back again after this. I'm getting married soon. And she was like, well, if you're getting married, hello, let's do this and get you down the aisle. Hello. Well, it's a bit different, because my partner actually doesn't want me to be slimmer. He says he loves me as I am, and if anything, I really need to stop dieting. And then she said to me, who is your man? Like, where did this come from? And I said, well, he's a minister in the church. And she did chops one. She chopped so, it's as if to say, you know, when you have a blackboard and you go, I would never forget how her chops was. She kissed her teeth so loud when I said that. And she was like, so you're gonna stop your weight loss that you've been doing so well at for all of these months because you're getting married to a minister. You're gonna lose yourself. Like, she went off on one, and then her man was like, you need to stop, because this is her personal story. I remember the dynamic between the two. She was a lot more, and he was more calm with the women and stuff. And so I went down the aisle a size 22. Oh yes, I got back to that. And you know the honeymoon phases, everybody's eating. We'll go out for restaurants and I will pay. Obviously, I will take him out to eat, and I will cook as well if we're at home. And I got bigger. And so by the time I went down the aisle, I was a size 22. And I looked cute, you know, a little voluptuous bride and all of that. As the years went on, I would say over the course of my marriage, it was always me battling with my weight. Before I get into that, let's just talk about our community, okay? And the African community as it is, where it pertains to matters to do with weight and all of that nature. So historically, I think a lot of us know that a lot of African communities, they associated being robust or being bigger. Not even just African communities, the Henry VIII days, okay? You associated wealth with, or being big with wealth. You know, if you're bigger, that means you have enough money to feed yourself. If you're skinnier, perhaps you're deemed as not being able to afford some dinner. So you'll be, you know, classified as a lower class citizen. And so that mentality is something that I would say he has, okay? The bigger you are, is healthier. You look and appear that you have stature. And it's confusing. Do you know why? Because as a community as well, we tease each other. We call each other fatty bum bum. We call each other, what's it again? Obolo in Ghana, that's what you call each other. I even seen a new one, they're saying obolo twin. I've never even heard of that one, but some guy on Instagram was saying obolo twin is where you literally, like, you are next level of fatness that you can't even be redeemed. Can you imagine? And here we are laughing at it and stuff. But then in the other breath, there's the mentality that if you're bigger, you're actually wealthier. It's just a bit confusing. That was the mindset of him, okay? So every time I wanted to lose weight, he would constantly say, oh, don't go too small, mommy. You look beautiful. I want a big mama. Keep on eating. My brother's wife, do you not see how she's a big woman and people respect her? And Sister Dare, you see these big women, people respect them. And so he wanted me to be like a big auntie. And I'm so sorry. It's like, this isn't funny, but I have to laugh. It's just weird, okay? It's just a weird situation. He wanted me to get bigger. When I did my video that went viral on Instagram, marriage versus divorce, the comments of people coming from me, oh, you should have done it in your marriage. Meanwhile, you don't understand, girl. Like, he wanted me bigger, so I went bigger, and that is something that we should never do. At the end of the day, my goal and my objective was to lose weight, to save myself, to save my health, to take myself from the trauma that I kept on being reminded by from all of the things that I encountered as a child. And so the fact that here is somebody loving that, is it really love, or was there another agenda behind that? Because I believe there was, and we'll get onto that in a moment. You know, the mindset of being bigger as healthier is absurd. And I do know a lot of old school people have that mindset, including him, obviously. Take, for example, we obviously share a child and we have a co-parenting arrangement. Obviously, he's full-time with me. In fact, he's 95% in my care, you guys. That's just the truth. But when he does go over to Father's for the weekend or for the week, if that ever happens, he'll go back how I've left him, you know, and then he comes back a little plumpier. And each time he'll go and come back, I'll be like, what's going on? You got a little baby fat here, little man boobs, baby boy, what's going on? There was this one time where he did come back and I was like, hell no. As a mother, it's my responsibility to obviously look after my child. I think it's our responsibility as parents, obviously. But I have really learned how to manage my food post weight loss surgery, eating smaller portions, etc., etc. Especially as a child, there's a certain way that the portion sizes that works for him. And our daily routine, we walk to and from school, okay? 10-minute walk there, 10-minute walk back. Our daily routine consists of, a lot of daily walking, even in the park, even if it's the weekends. He goes skating, he goes swimming. I keep the boy active and I keep his meals nice. Like, not to say he's been deprived. Of course, he gets a little snack and, chocolate and crisps and stuff as a kid, milkshake, little McDonald's every so now and again. You give them those treats, I guess, but daily our routine is solid. And so I constantly keep having to say this to his father, please keep that routine so that he remains healthy. And so when he comes back to me and he's a lot chubbier and panting, and he can barely walk fast, and his school uniform ain't closing, I'm raising questions. And this was very, very recent, literally a month and a bit ago. I called him up and I was like, what on earth and why on earth is AJ this big again? What is going on? Oh, don't you know it is healthy? It is healthy to be like this. So I sat down my child and I will even ask some questions like, what do you eat when you go there? I don't mean to make this about food, because I'm also not trying to put trauma on this child that he has to be obsessive with his eating. I want him to learn that lifestyle is based on maintenance, okay? A healthy lifestyle is based on maintenance at the very least. And so I don't want to constantly have to talk about these things with him. I want him to see it as natural to eat healthy and just exercise as part of our lifestyles, right? But I did have to ask some questions so that I can get down to the root bottom. When you go to your dad's, what do you eat? He's telling me he's eating mountains of food, and it just kind of makes me recall that's exactly how we used to eat when we were together. He didn't want to take a simple size. And it's interesting because he never put on the weight. But maybe from my mum's family, my son puts it on. He loses it quickly as well, but he also puts it on. And that's perhaps from my side of the family, who knows? But regardless, I'm noticing a pattern here. And that mindset is absolutely deadly. So back to, I guess, the major red flags of him wanting me to get bigger, particularly before we got married. There's also the body shaming. There was one time he actually called me fatty bum bum, and he said it once and I just didn't say anything. I just ignored it. I was like, he literally, I just didn't hear that. Or perhaps it was a joke. I don't know. I will laugh off of this occasion, if anything, or say nothing, but he would never say that again. And funny enough as well, he's Nigerian. So I'm wondering, where did you know? What you know about fatty bum bum? That's a very Jamaican thing to say. Wouldn't you agree, you guys? That's a very Caribbean thing to say. So I was quite surprised. He was literally calling me fatty bum bum to my face and mocking me. And so the second time, I basically confronted him because he said it again. I said, can you please not call me that? I associate that with, mocking, because people used to say that to me when I was a child. And it used to hurt my feelings. So can you not say that, please? And he stopped and he never said it again. But rather, it's big is beautiful. Get bigger, get bigger, get bigger. And then, of course, lo and behold, I became... And so I want to go back to that and the mindset in African communities, or at least the old school mindset. Are we trying to mock somebody for being big, like by calling them obolobu or obolobu twin? That's the recent one. Or are we praising them for being bigger and beautiful because apparently that's associated with being responsible and being healthy? It gets a bit confusing in our community. Like, what do we actually want to see? I was body shamed by him. I remember him commenting on my bum. Now, this is very interesting. There's a peculiar type of bum shape some Ghanaian women have. So you might have this simple, the normal, round shape one. But there's a lot of Ghanaian women that have this broad bum, and they have broad hips, a broad bum. And then it's like it's got like a slant at the top. I have it, a slant at the top, and then there's a bit of meat, and then it goes flat, and then the meat continues at the bottom. And so we're having this interesting shape overall. And that is a shape all of the women in my family have. We all have it. My nieces, my cousins, my sister, everybody, we all got that. My mom, my grandma, is our bum shape. And I remember him as well commenting on that. So is this weird? Because all of the features that I come with, you said it's beautiful, but in the other breath, you're actually teasing me for having these features. Honestly, when I look back at all of this is all very bloody traumatic. I went from being relatively confident in my weight loss journey just before I met him to now the rest of my days until I had that weight loss surgery, me battling back and forth with the scales, with my food, when I tell you, it became an obsession of trying to lose weight versus his opinions of what he wanted me to be. It was a constant battle at this point. For him, the bigger the better. But in the other breath, it was affecting everything. My skin, my body size, and just feeling comfortable, clothing, breathing, sleep apnea, migraines, headaches, backaches. Even, I remember being pregnant with my son. Okay, and having even my twin pregnancy that I lost, but particularly my son, because I went full term with him, and me driving my Range Rover with this huge stomach, and I could barely fit in. And I remember I couldn't even fit the seatbelt around myself and my bum. I could barely even fit it round myself whilst not pregnant, let alone. So I remember there was a time where I had to drive to my appointments. Okay. I had to, because it would go peer the car. I had to put the seatbelt through my back so that the car doesn't make the noise that, that you need to plug in your seatbelt. Okay? And he was a passenger princess. And I was 9 months pregnant. Okay? Going every other week for my scans because I had incompetent cervix. It got to a point where I couldn't drive myself. And so I had to book an Uber, or my mum would take me to my antenatal appointments. And even that Uber cost was costly to go to Queen Charlotte Hospital every other week, okay? It wasn't cheap. And of course, who fit the bill? Me. And he was the passenger princess each time we went for these appointments. Amazing. I remember, so in the previous video, I asked you guys what would be considered as financial abuse. Because honestly, and there was mixed responses, because I was a bit confused as well. But something makes me think, because I feel like the need and wanting me to be bigger had a bit of an agenda or a motive attached behind it. Because me being that size was relatively attached to my business and my career as a plus size content creator. And so since I was bringing in the fish, and I was bringing in the bread, and I was bringing in the loaves and the donuts and cut cake and jollof and fufu and eba and pounded yam, since I was bringing all of that in with what I did for a living, I guess the agenda was to keep me as fat as possible so that doesn't stop. So when I finally said to him, I'm going to do this weight loss surgery, and by then it would have been about 2018, 2019, and I said, I'm doing this, I need to do this. The first thing he started to feed me with is, that you're going to lose money and business and everything because you're losing this weight. He wasn't wrong about that, because I've made a video about that as well. But do you know what a real man does? Babe, since you're going to lose this weight, this is how it would affect you. But guess what? I got you. Never that. Never that. And so what is your assumption then? Would you perhaps see that as financial abuse at this time? Because I genuinely believe and feel there was a motive and an agenda behind that. Keep Chanel fat so she brings the bread in. Or maybe I'm speculating, I don't know. And so for a while, we were going back and forth about the weight loss surgery. I actually had been approved by the NHS, which is a big thing. I I had a consultation, several, my GP, then they took me for appointments at the hospital, and I was on the waiting list to get that surgery done free of charge. Do you know why? Because I was in such a state with my weight that they were offering this to me for free. That's very rare in this country. Bear in mind, you guys, that this was pre-pandemic though, because things change now. But that was it for me. I didn't have diabetes. I didn't have any obese related diseases. But because I literally ticked all the boxes that they were going to give me this thing on the NHS. And I remember us going to these consultations, and he would literally be saying to the consultant, I hope she doesn't lose too much weight and stuff like that. Oh yeah. And so there was a debate, and I had to sit him down and say, listen, when I was pregnant with our son, I really struggled. I struggled to just maintain the pregnancy because of how big I was. So please, the reason why I'm going to lose this weight is because I want a successful and a stress-free, lighter pregnancy. Please, I'm doing this for us to have a baby. Now, let me tell you something, and I'm not even going to lie. Yes, I did say that. However, do you really think I was going to breed for him again? No. Because when it got to it and I had my weight loss surgery, things just became from bad to worse. I was now doing absolutely everything. I had already been for a while, and there was a percentage from him, but I was doing everything. Paying the full mortgage. Yes. Paying for everything, all the maintenance of our life. And I said, you know what? If another belly comes along, another baby comes along, who's forfeiting that bill? Chanel. So I said, you know what, my guy? I'm not even having more kids. Not with you. That ain't gonna happen. Because I'm feeling that everything is in my hands. And you're not even trying to move and step to the next level for us to, as a partnership, maintain and build this life together. It's all on me, and I'm tired. I'm exhausted. And let me just remind you, I'm sharing this because it is my story and my experience. And there are a lot of women in their homes who are suffering in silence, who are being abused and manipulated financially, emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, everything you can think of, okay? You know, words are bloody powerful. And I swear, you guys, watch what you say. Because sometimes when you say things, it really does come into fruition. There was one evening, and we had a very heated discussion. And it was based upon all of the issues, you know, even more than what I've explained, obviously. And all I remember is me closing that argument and saying to him, I'm giving you 1 year. 1 more year to clean this mess up, to change your act, to better yourself, to catch up, to do your part. I'm giving you 1 year. I didn't even explain all of that, but all I said is I'm giving you 1 year. And do you know what his response was to me? If you like, divorce me tomorrow. It's interesting because when I said I'm giving you 1 year, I didn't even know why I was saying it. Because I just said, I'm giving you 1 year. Yeah, 1 year for what? Divorce actually wasn't on the cards in my mind. But since you said it, I said, okay. You know, I went away. I prayed on it. I pondered over it. I very soon after that went to visit my pastor at the time. And this time we had a church in the area we were living in. To this day, that's my favorite church I've ever attended. If I move back there, I will go there, maybe. I'm not really into church these days at all, but it's a great community place. And my pastor was a white woman. Before my Jamaican pastor became the pastor, Pastor Tyrone. But yes, I spoke to her about a few of these things, or a lot of these things, and she said to me, Chanel, I am an advocate for marriage. If you look in the ministry, all you see is couples, and it's so true. The marriage, the church was filled of really beautiful Christian marriages and Christian families. There was rarely any single mothers at this church, if I'm being honest. And she herself, her partner, her husband, who was the pastor, passed on. And so she was holding the church up at that point. And she said, Chanel, I am a huge advocate for marriage as a Christian woman. But with what you're telling me right now, honey, I would slip you the details of this lawyer. Do what you got to do. I swear. This was my pastor advising me to divorce. My own pastor advising me to divorce. And she's not wrong for that. Because what she could see is a woman headed for danger, headed for destruction, headed for death. And boy, you guys have got to wait for part 4 at this point, till death do us part. Because honestly, it was heading there. I'm thankful to Pastor Alison for that advice. I also spoke to my therapist, and she said, you really waiting for 1 year? I said, yeah, I guess so. She's like, with what is going on, you better just start, at least think of separating now, surely. I was like, well, he doesn't want to leave. He does not want to let go of this marriage at all. But it's weird because you're the one who said that I should go to marry and divorce you the next day. You know, it's funny, and why I said that words are powerful, because bang on a year after that, to the date, and I have even all the evidence to prove that, from when he said that to me, we had the final dissolution from the court to confirm that our marriage had been dissolved. He was the one that declared he wanted that divorce and wanted it a year from then, even without me wanting or thinking that's what I was going to do. But it's so interesting that a year on from that, that's where we got the actual divorce papers finally sealed and signed from the court, dissolved. I ended up filing, I think, about 1 or 2 months from when he actually said that. And I think the law changed at that time, that you don't have to have the signature from the other party for it to be finalized. I will get up that law and clarify, and in the next video perhaps I would explain that, or perhaps we can do a different video about divorce and the processes of that, because that will be an interesting thing, just to help some women out there who are stuck, because a lot of our sisters are stuck. We just don't know where to start. There's a lot of things I would have done differently, because there's so much that should have been owed to me. But at this point, I was so drained and so bloody exhausted that I said, you know what? Let me start again. And here we are. Part 4 soon come. Piao.